Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining our session. We're from New York, so right after this is over, we're actually going straight to the airport, going back to snowy New York, so maybe I'll keep the session going longer just for that. Before we officially begin, you probably saw it in front of you around the room. There are sheets with the QR code. This is obviously just optional, but if you want to join our class for today to participate, that'd be great. As an incentive to that, we'll be giving away some prizes at the end of the session. I know there's at least one of you in this room who's trying to score a free iPad case from one of the exhibitors downstairs. We have 2 iPad cases to give away, as well as 2 MacBook cases. So if that's convincing at all, please feel free. You should have the sheet there. All you need to do is scan the QR code, punch in that code on the bottom, and register. It'll take you 5 seconds. You won't get any emails. Don't worry. You won't spam your email or anything like that.
The only thing I'll add to that is it would be ideal as a student, which hopefully you'll get a chance to do, with a tablet, if you have one with you, if you have an iPad or some other tablet. If not, you can use any device, but you'll see when we get there, we're going to ask you to kind of hand in some piece of content that you'll work on, so it will be a little better from a tablet than from a phone if you have one.
Anyway, let's jump right in. Welcome, iPad and LMS, workflows that work. So just curious, by a show of hands, how many people here are using some type of LMS in their school? Just want to gauge. Okay, great. How many of you are using iPads in some way, one-to-one or BYOD? Okay, great. So we're in the same boat. We're in a school from Long Island. We started our iPad program last year, and we gave our teachers the LMS. We gave them iPads. And then, of course, came the questions. What do you do with them? How do you connect them? How do they fuse together to be one ongoing workflow? How do students access your material? How do they get it back to you? These are things that we want to explore with you today, but not just explore in the traditional sense of showing you how to do a workflow, but how to make a creative workflow, something that's innovative, something that's different, that students will gain more from than just getting their material back in a digitized version. I'm Aaron Fleksher, and this is Jeff Rothman, who will be starting off our presentation now.
Okay, so just to give you a quick sense, Aaron already mentioned we're from New York. We are from a K-12 private school. We have 4 divisions. Total is about 1,600 students. So for those of you in the public world, that might be really tiny. For those of you in the private world, it might be huge. It might be, status quo. But that's who we are. And we've built up our one-to-one program. We're now in our 2nd year in our 6th and 7th grade. And conversation for another time, although I think it's been really successful, is we've been building it up in our high schools in a totally different way, more selective by class as opposed to a whole grade. We've kind of found the early adopters of teachers who were interested, and it's, we're up to, in one of our divisions, almost about a quarter of the school that way, and hoping to keep growing it. Anyway, that's a conversation for another time. But there's really just a couple of underlying assumptions that we're making before we jump into what we hope will be a really useful, hands-on approach to the workflow with the iPad. The first one is, which if you're already using iPads, you learn this pretty quickly. iPads and laptops are not the same kind of device. iPads function completely differently. You're going to see that yourselves as a student in our little demo here today. But that's just something that you got to see from the get-go in terms of everything being in the cloud, in terms of how you bring in documents, the type of activities that you're going to want your students to do on an iPad. So in terms of that, there's been a lot of tweets out here in the last few days in terms of choosing which device you want. Don't choose that based on the device. Choose that based on what you want your teachers to be doing in the classroom with your students, and then you can work backwards to figure out which device will work best for that. So that's assumption number 1. Assumption number 2 is that, at least in our opinion, an iPad program or a BYOD program without an LMS is kind of, starting backwards. As our quote up there, says up there, an iPad program without an LMS is like FETC participant without Wi-Fi. I would argue it's actually worse, because I've been an FETC participant without Wi-Fi, and I think I've gotten a lot accomplished. But I really, really strongly believe, and this is just from the last 2 years of experience of really seeing this, you need to introduce your teachers to that online hub of communication to be able to post the assignments, to be able to collect assignments, to be able to post videos, whatever content it is that you want your teachers to deliver to your students, it's super, super important that that comes. So when we went into this realm, everyone's iPads, 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 I said, wait a minute, we need to go find ourselves an LMS first. Some of you might relate to this. In the years before this, we had select teachers who were using free LMS like Edmodo at the time and things like that, which I used in my own classroom, which were really nice. One of the things that we really believe strongly is if we want this to be functional in a high caliber way with our teachers, we want to take as much of that back end annoying work, if you will, off of the teacher's shoulders. So for example, again, a whole nother conversation, we have our LMS completely synced in with our SIS. So teachers walk in day one, they have their class rosters already in their learning management system. Right? I remember my days as an Edmodo user, I would have to add in, or send out an invitation with a code, kind of like what I did with you guys today, to get into my Edmodo course. So there's a whole lot of underpinnings that we're kind of assuming here. And that second one being that really having that learning management system is so important to having a successful program. In terms of the iPads, I don't know if this is novel to anyone, but this kind of took us about a year to at least develop in a way that would work well for our teachers. And whenever we hand a new iPad teacher an iPad, this is the framework that we really teach them in terms of what are the uses that you would want to use an iPad for in the classroom. And we've developed, again, it's not our ideas, it's just kind of our framework of 6 different ways. Again, if you've been to other iPad sessions here at FETC or otherwise, you probably are focused more on those first 2, and for good reason, because those first 2 or 3 are probably the reasons you're using an iPad. It's interesting that what we're presenting them today, which we think will be really super important, is the bottom last one, not because it's last in importance, but that's not the reason you would choose an iPad. No matter what, you're going to want to focus on assessment because we all want to make sure we know that our students are learning. We're all going to want to focus on creativity and presentation and other types of apps, right? So for example, if you were an assessment, if you were at the the live tech share the other day, Leslie used the Kahoot or Socrative, or 2 pretty well-known ones out there. If you use an LMS, many LMS have their own assessment tools built in. Our LMS, Haiku Learning, which we're going to have some little freebies also out from them after we're done as well. They have a assessment piece. So assessment is obviously a key. The creativity is probably the biggest discussion. I know I walked in here, I don't know if anyone was here before, there was a large group of kindergarten teachers, and they were talking about apps like Book Creator and Educreations and Explain Everything and things like that, which are super important, probably K through 12 if you know how to use them properly. That's more the creativity. And again, I'm not going to go through all of them. Presentation today we're presenting from Keynote, which is an obvious one. There's a really big growing app that we have a bunch of teachers that are really hooked on Nearpod, which kind of combines some of those things. And then there's obviously subject-specific apps. And finally, just to get into the nuts and bolts of what we want is the workflow. You're still going to be assigning some piece of content to your students that you want them to work on. And we'll talk about the different ways that happens. But to kind of give you a little context to where we think we've kind of come up with a way of really using the iPads to the next level, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron, but I'm going to get out of the way. We're going to still be looking over there. We're going to explain in a few minutes. The reason we have 2 is because we really are going to play teacher-student off of each other in a couple of minutes when we walk you through it. So at the moment, keep your attention over there. We're going to get this in a couple of minutes.
Thank you, Jeff. So some of you might be wondering, why is there a little optimum thing up there? So when we discussed workflow and how are we going to sort of set it up in clear instructions to our teachers, what workflow they should work off of, we sort of said to ourselves, okay, there's a lot of value in terms of logistics, there's a lot of value in terms of properly giving a student an assignment and getting it back, and then even annotating it and giving it back to the student marked. But where is the educational component? How is technology enhancing the workflow? And we said, well, you know what? iPads are not for workflow. As Jeff mentioned, there's many uses of iPads. But what if you took a workflow and with the creativity of the iPad, made it into a whole new ballgame? Let me tell you a little story. So over the summer, I work abroad, actually. I run an educational program for teens across the Atlantic Ocean, that is. And 2 weeks before I was leaving, I came home and I told my wife, we got to move. She's like, what are you talking about? She didn't like hearing that. So as it ended up being, my job, in the Hebrew Academy where I work now, they gave me a promotion. We were living my commute was close to an hour, and I really had to be closer. We had to move very quickly. Now, what does a good ed techie like me do when he moves? Before I have food in the fridge, before I have electricity, before I have heat, of course I need my Wi-Fi. So right away I ran, I called up Optimum to have my service transferred, and a week or two later, right as I'm leaving, I see this huge bill, and I'm like, whoa, like, why does my bill look so different? And sure enough, almost as if the Wi-Fi gods were listening to me, I got this email in my inbox that very day. And
Hi, Aaron.
This is my bill.
Thank you for being an Optimum customer. Since there's been a recent change to your service, we've created this video to help you understand your bill. Let's get started with your account summary, including any balances or payments. This is your total amount due, which includes all activity during your billing period. And your due date is the 22nd of this month. But there's no need to worry, since you're scheduled for automatic payments. Now it's time to jump in. First, we'll show you.
Okay, so it went on to give me a whole breakdown, and I saw this video, and I said to myself, what if I gave this, let me just get back there for a second. What if I gave this, what if I gave this to students? Meaning, what if students didn't get back this marked up paper, whether it's from a pen, a red pen, or from the digital version, but they actually got a video back explaining where they went wrong, where they did well. And therefore, it's not just a workflow, but you're using the iPad as a core component to do that. And then we felt now there's value to such a piece. What we want to show you is this workflow, but ultimately building up to how you can do something creative with it, and therefore justifying how an iPad is a crucial component in doing such a workflow.
Right. So this little picture up here, which we're going to, you can add up all the pieces, that's fine, is really what the next 25 minutes or whatever we have till the end is going to be about, is really what we have figured out with our iPad and our learning management system, this workflow, starting on the top left. So obviously, the teacher is going to post some kind of digital content onto the learning management system that they want their students to then bring onto the iPad. So the first top left, top right are going to kind of go together. That in your classroom might be the end of the workflow on some days. It might just be getting a worksheet of some sorts or a chart to fill out, or who knows what that digital content might be. But step A is for the teacher to post that on that LMS. And again, we're not going to go through, even though we're going to show you the process, I'm not going to go through the steps of how to post it, because again, that will be a little different depending what LMS you're using, but every LMS has this most basic feature. And again, we're going to be using, as I mentioned before, the Haiku Learning, which will be over here in a moment. And then, how is it that the students will get that from the LMS onto their iPad? Now, this is really where the point of departure, which now seems really easy for us, but took us some time to really figure out with the teachers, is how you're going to do that and what app you're going to use, or your students will use, is really going to depend on what it is that you want your students to do. So we're going to show you kind of two options. One is a Google Doc option, which essentially will be if you're going to be posting a Google Doc or a Word document for those of you in Microsoft. And again, a different component we didn't mention, but it's going to come up a little later. Really super important if you're a Google Apps school that your LMS integrates with Google Apps. Schoology does, a lot of those big ones do. That's super, super important. So that's going to be one option. The way I look at it is, are you going to want your students to be typing something out? Right? That's probably the reason you're going to go to that direction. Whereas the other option, which you see there, we have Notability. In our school, we happen to choose, at the time, and I still like it actually, we use GoodNotes, which is, Notability seems to be a little bit more popular out there, but those are the two kind of paid note-taking, PDF, annotating apps. To my knowledge, there still isn't a free, good Annotating PDF app that's free. So we've chosen to go with Good Notes in our school, but they're pretty much the same idea. So that's going to be in our mind for two reasons. Number one, if you want your children to be handwriting something, right? We're not looking to throw away like our handwritten expression here, right? So we're going to show you a real basic, even an elementary school one, but it could be in any grade. If you want them to annotate something, a piece of literature, a piece of text, a handwriting activity, whatever it might be. The other reason you might be using that route is simply if you've been teaching for a while and you have really good handouts that might be PDF versions that you don't have access to, maybe an original that you can get into Google Docs, something like that. So that might be a different reason why you'd want to use this route. So we're going to walk you through, and we're going to stop there. We're going to come back to the bottom in a minute. But essentially, the next part will be once we have the student complete it, the bottom right, no, Aaron, can you go back for one more second? The bottom right is, now that the student did the work, how do they give it back to you? That would be the next step you could choose to go to. And the final step will be, if you choose, to be able to annotate that work and give that back to the students. Now that can happen in the typical annotation, handwritten, or as we're going to try to lead up to, as Aaron mentioned before, perhaps even really integrating the creativity of the iPad, giving them back, maybe in addition to a handwritten video. Okay, so we're going to start with the first two. So if you shift over here now, shift focus for a moment.
I'll be the student. I look like the student.
Yeah. If you look over here, this is a basic page that Haiku was nice enough to set up our own domain for this so that we had a nice clean look for you guys here today. Very basic set of pages that we have that we're going to take you through. Main content over here. For those of you, just curious, was everyone successful in getting into the class? Okay, great. So our resources, by the way, for everything that we're doing are up here as well as on the My FETC site. So, and there'll be a link at the end as well if you want to get to those. So that's our contact information. Again, if you want to find us, tweet us, email us. So I'm going to go off that welcome page now, go to my simple, this is not touchboard, I have to keep reminding myself, to our first two. Let's let it load.
Yep.
Okay, great. So you'll see here I have added two documents. Again, in my school, it typically wouldn't be a Word document, it would be a Google Doc, but for technical setting up this separate domain, we couldn't link it with our Google piece for today. But if you do this for real life, you will have that. So we just added, it will not affect you as a student, as you'll see in a few minutes. And then we have a nice handwriting activity that's a PDF. So I posted those up there. Again, I'm not walking you through how to do that, but that's a pretty basic step in an LMS. And now Aaron, over there, again, I apologize for, hopefully you won't get any whiplash going back and forth, but as we were preparing this, we really did feel that the two screens would really help you get this process. So Aaron, as a student now, is going to show you how he opens up those two pieces.
Great. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm a student right now, and we have two worksheets here. The first one is actually something you'll have a chance to fill out in a little while if you want to win one of those prizes or just for fun. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on it. Again, this is a document. It's something where I'm going to be doing some writing on. Hopefully the Wi-Fi cooperates. It's always presenter's worst here. Oh, beautiful. And of course, since I want to write in it, so as Jeff had mentioned, this is not really heavy, intensive writing, but were it to be, I'd probably open it in Google Docs as opposed to Notability. It's just easier to type into. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let's see. It's funny, I think the free Wi-Fi was fine. There we go.
Okay. It's coming. The open Wi-Fi is better?
Maybe. Never took this long. Let me, there we go. Okay, again, here's my worksheet. Imagine I'm the student, and since it's in Google Docs, anywhere I click, I could type into it. And of course, we'll show the sending back part afterwards. And that would be something to type. And now, as Jeff mentioned, there's also the other component, which would be annotating. You have a worksheet, you scanned it in from a PDF. and you want your students to do that. And so now I'm going to go to the second one, tracing. Okay, again, now this time I'll open it up into, it could be either Good Notes, Notability, any of those work.
Just one thing that we're taking for granted, because if you're not using an iPad a lot, this is something we learned a little bit the hard way too in terms of choosing how we did this workflow. When you're in Safari opening up these documents, it kind of just puts you into a browser. Then on that top right is where you have the little disappearing open in box, where you then have your choice of opening in whatever apps are there. So most likely with whatever LMS you're using, you're not going to want to use it just in that main browser. You want to then choose to open it in whatever app you're doing. Anyway, so as I was talking, Aaron just quickly filled that out.
I'm a very quick learner here. I was able to trace my numbers very successfully. And as a student,
that's debatable.
Again, if we are stopping at this point, if my teacher, Mr. Rothman over here, doesn't want to see my work, so I've done it. It's saved in my Good Notes or my Notability folder, and that's wonderful.
Okay, so now, and as I'm jumping in, we'll just go back to that. Could you just put up the
yeah, no problem.
Picture again? Now, if you use an LMS, you'll know that all LMSs have some kind of Dropbox feature, which is a way that you can have your students upload their assignment. Again, who here is not using an LMS? So if you're not using an LMS, you can accomplish a lot of this. It's going to be a little different. We could talk about this another time. But if you use Dropbox, like the company Dropbox, which is an online cloud storage system, they have like a second app called Drop It To Me, which is a really good way that you can kind of send out an easy link to your students where they can then, it's just basically a link to an upload box. And those files that they upload will go right into your Dropbox account. In my mind, that's like a good workaround. It's not the ideal way to go, but it is definitely a good option. So now, first top right, top left, as we mentioned, Aaron just completed. Pretty successful, right? He opened it up either in Google Docs or in his Notability Good Notes app. Now, it's going to be an assignment that the teacher wants to actually see, right? He wants the student to hand in. So we're moving to the bottom right there. So now, as a teacher, again, I'm not going to demo this, but I've created here on my student Dropbox page. So if you're in the account, you can look at it. Don't hand anything into this one because we're going to have you hand it into a different one in a few minutes. So you'll see a totally different essay. I assigned as a teacher an essay on Shakespeare.
We're going from
to
1
Aaron,
to 3 to Shakespeare
right?
very fast.
Yeah. Tracing to Shakespeare. Figure that one. And you'll see here the basic elements of the Dropbox. It's got a due date. There's going to be a place where I'm going to show you in a minute. Aaron's going to have an opportunity to hand his essay in. Okay? And again, I'm not showing you how I put that up there, but again, it's also usually a couple of clicks just to create that receptacle, that Dropbox for the teacher to create so that the student can do. So now Aaron's going to show you, yes?
Is that part of Dropbox itself?
No, so that's what you have to really,
It's just a
if you're not using an LMS, this is going to be a really important thing to remember. Dropbox as a company, as a cloud storage system, is nothing to do with this Dropbox or the Dropbox on Schoology or anything else. There's a company that, I don't know how that, well, Dropbox as a company is, but that's they all call it the same thing. So it's really important distinction. Again, they're both good tools, but it's important to realize that.
Right. This is the literal Dropbox for the students dropping their essay in. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Dropbox tab, and I actually have 2 assignments open right now. I'm doing the Shakespeare one, so I'm going to go ahead and click on Hand In. And I'll just make a note here. For the purposes of this session, since it's a demo, I'm just going to be uploading a quick screenshot of a picture of an essay that I actually found from 11th grade. It was fun to find those files. But really, if this was a real student in our school, they would have the option right now to basically pull a document from their Google Drive directly, which makes the whole process a lot easier and also encourages their students to be using their Drive as their sort of focal point of their ecosystem.
And just one thing, we just heard this on the way in. If your schools are not Google App schools, but if you work with Microsoft, it sounds like Haiku is really close to working on an integration with Microsoft's cloud-based system so that option will be there too. so that your students can complete their assignments through the cloud Microsoft applications and then hand it in the same.
Okay, so Mr. Rothman, I just handed in my assignment, and now you as a teacher, I guess, can do as you wish with it.
Great. So I'm going to click over here on my iPad, go to Dropbox. And now again, keep in mind I'm the teacher, so you're not going to see what I'm seeing now because you wouldn't want your students to see each other's work. So right here I have two different items. We're going to get to that final project in just a couple of minutes. Shakespeare, this is the essay that we have here. I have now I have a whole bunch of students in the class because you guys are in there, great. But I'm just going to focus for a minute on Aaron. He's over here. It tells me when I have a new assignment that's been submitted. So if I click on Aaron, and again, all of this stuff we did it ahead of time. So you'll see Aaron what he uploaded, and you'll see a whole bunch of versions if I annotated it. So I'm going to show you a quick version of Aaron's Macbeth essay, which, again, I'm not showing you how to do this purposely because every LMS will be different, but I'm pretty sure they all have the same annotating options, okay? But I've annotated Aaron's essay ahead of time. And right now, Aaron will always have, when he logs in, his original plus the file of the teacher's annotations and comments. Now, before we get you to the last piece, okay, but just to review, Aaron, if you could throw that back up one more time.
Yeah.
What we got through here is, as a teacher, what have I done today? I have created some digital content that I posted up on my learning management system. After I got my students to complete it, or before actually, I created a Dropbox for them to submit it to. And then once they've submitted it, the third step is I've annotated it. The fourth part of it we're going to come to in a minute. What I think we're going to do right now is let's let you play student for a moment. So if you could go, let me get out of this screen. If you could all go to the tab Worksheets. And for this purpose, it doesn't really matter which one you do, but choose, actually we do want you to do the Google Doc.
The FETC worksheet.
The FETC worksheet, so that's probably the first one, I believe. Let's wait for my Wi-Fi to catch up. This one, if you could open that up into Google Docs, or for this purpose as Notability. The reason why it doesn't matter now is because for you to submit it, what I want you to do is complete it. It will take you about a minute to complete. And then screenshot it. If you don't know how to do a screenshot from an iPad, you literally press the home button and the power on the top right at the same time. That will save whatever is on your screen right into your camera roll. Okay? And then I'm going to walk you through again how you'll submit it back to me. Okay? But the point, again, this is not ideal because it's going to be a little smaller than you would like. So the Google route is definitely the better one once you're, once you have a live LMS that's integrated with Google. So one more time, if everybody could open up. Is everybody successful in opening up that document? Use the FETC worksheet and open it. So no, because it's going to open in a browser. Top right button, tap, open. Am I going to lose any words?
What's this open right now?
Oh, okay.
Okay. So here
So, and you should write, right? Okay, great.
Right on the bottom there.
So,
any of these tools will be fine.
you didn't get what email?
Anything that'd be noted.
No, you didn't get any email. Did you get into the class?
I did. I'm up there on your list.
So then you should be able to, where you logged in?
Yeah, that's just the welcome screen.
Came in here,
Let's see.
and I did all this stuff on the QR.
No.
So now you should be able to log right in. You don't need to get an email back. Just use whatever, when you registered, just put in that username and password that you put in. So,
you're saying it.
okay, you're on, okay, so let's just do this. I'm going to first open it in Safari because that will allow me then to open in.
Yeah, that's why I always clean up my iPad because you run out of space for everything.
Open in. See, the issue is here. It looks like you don't. We're going to just open it in Pages because you don't have. It doesn't. Looks like you don't have.
You're registered.
No, but not Google Docs.
No, I don't. Continue
So this will work for you just fine.
Yes.
This should
It
open
has-
it.
It has the worksheet. It's that FETC worksheet. You're going to have to open it in something else.
Let me help
Okay,
you.
that's coming in. Okay, now again, for those of you who are able to get it, if you could again fill it out just for fun, and then take a screenshot. You may not get the whole thing in the screenshot, don't worry about that. And then
And it's going.
submit that. Now, just to review while Aaron's helping a few others, the way you're going to submit it,
What do you have on it?
again, you're going to go to Final Project. I didn't show you this yet. Final Project.
So then, right,
You are going to
need
go
have a note.
in the Final Project. There's one Dropbox there. Aaron, we need
Yeah.
we need you to demo this because you're the student.
Yeah.
But if you go to Final Project, you should have this Dropbox with a hand-in option, which then will pop up, which Aaron will show you in a second, a open, what's the exact language? I think it's open
I'm
file.
gonna
Or,
click on, here's Final Project. I'm going to click on Go to Dropbox tab. I heard someone do a screenshot, so. And then you're going to find which assignment we're doing. Right now it's the final project. So click on Hand In on the right-hand side. And just click on
choose
Choose
files. That's the one. And then
And
choose
just
files
open your camera
now.
roll and pick the screenshot. And we'll give you a minute to do this. If anyone needs help, I'm happy to come around and assist you. I know people want to win stuff, so. I'm sorry.
Well,
Oh,
we're
that's
going to
not
only
true, no.
we're
No,
going to
that's
choose
not
2
true.
random people first.
We will have another. Well, if you signed up for a class, that alone makes you eligible. So if you
While you're working, I will tell you one little shout out, and this is a whole conversation, choosing iPad cases and that whole piece. We made a choice 2 years ago, which we've been really happy with. We're looking at some alternatives. Honestly, I don't know if we're going to make that change because even though we've recently had a couple breaks, if you have 500 iPads out there and 10 of them break, not so bad. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to decide that in the next couple months. But there's a great company. Either way, they make a whole bunch of things called Max cases. The first giveaway we're going to give out to someone random who handed it in is actually not a protective case, but there's a case which has, it's called their educator's case, which has a strap that you can take your iPad out of your normal case, snap it in, and it's got a nice strap here. I don't want to take it out of the packaging for the lucky person who's going to win it. And it's a lot easier to put in. So it looks like Tom
where are you,
Olson.
Tom?
Where's Tom?
All right,
Okay.
Tom, you'll come up and choose at the end what he wants.
Okay, we have 2 different choices, and we can let them choose right now. And this is from the same company. I happen to use this myself. It's really good. If you have a MacBook, 11-inch or 13-inch MacBook Air, that will work. So then maybe go with the iPad case.
All right.
But I think I have an 11-inch and a 13-inch.
So-
but did anybody else successfully hand in?
We could refresh.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, so you have to, what are you in right now?
Okay,
Oh,
Sarah.
you filled it out.
Okay, Sarah, do
Okay,
you
so
want
just
a
take a screenshot.
MacBook Show
Okay,
or
great.
a iPad case?
Oh, okay.
This is my camera roll.
Oh, okay, great. So now just go to Haiku.
Pleasure.
And you're going to go to,
Again, for those of you who got the iPad, remember, do not treat that as a protective case or your iPad will break and I don't want to be responsible. Okay,
okay, we got one more submission.
just because we have only a couple minutes before we wrap up, hopefully you had a chance to do that. If not, and I'm just going to put this back up for 1 minute before we get to what we think
And then just click
is the kind of endpoint of this.
Yeah. So just to
Go for it.
Yeah, just to wrap this up, about 20 minutes ago I showed you my bill. Nothing private on that in information. But again, our goal here, hopefully everything that you've seen up until now, and again, we have all this information posted, so you can refer back to it. We really have worked very hard to come up with a very clear and easy to follow set of instructions to go through this workflow process, so feel free to review it at home and plug it into your LMS. But again, we weren't satisfied with just doing that because that's just taking an iPad and using it as a digital notebook. We really wanted to take it to the next level. We wanted to give the students that optimum online Wi-Fi experience that I got with my internet service provider, meaning I want students to say, wow, because my teacher, because I have these iPads, that means that when I get my assignment back, I can actually get a video of my teacher explaining to me where I went wrong. Because, you know, an X here or an incomplete there doesn't really tell me much. But a video takes it to the next level.
So what I have here on my screen before I click on the video, as a teacher, and again, this might be, if this is a concept that you've never thought of before, it might sound a little bit overwhelming. And one of my basic principles as I work with my teachers is I won't ask my teachers to do something that I haven't done myself. So somehow I find the time still to teach one class, only a couple of days a week. And not to about 2 months ago, happens to be like an honors level class, and I only have 13 students. So I realize if you're a high school teacher with 100 students, you might have to give this some thought a little differently. If you're an elementary school teacher with one class, this might be something you really might want to give some thought to, okay? And what I did, before I show you this, was I did this for one of their exams. I actually I don't think I ever handed back the paper version. I basically I graded it by hand, made it into a PDF, brought it into my iPad and to explain everything, and I created a little video kind of like this to hand it back. This is my annotating Aaron's. Oh wait, time out. We need to put where's that audio clip?
Oh, I got you.
Okay, Aaron, let's see how you did. So first, how would you rate the Wi-Fi at FET so far? So that will depend, very cute, on is there any staff here watching. So I don't know about you, audience. Why don't you take a look around if there is any FET staff. If not, then give your honest answer to that question. Let's take a look at number 2. Look at the picture below. No, Aaron, I'm sorry, it is not a security monitor. It is actually one of the original Apple computers. Depending on the age of you out there in the audience, you may or may not recognize that picture. Let's move along to number 3. Okay, Aaron, let's see how you did for number 3. So, what is this picture over here? A biblical figure studying under an apple tree. No, Aaron, I'm sorry, that is not correct. It, in fact, is...
We paused on purpose for our next winner. Does anyone know what that picture is of?
That's not what you're giving away, Aaron. Don't give that away.
I'm not giving that away. Sorry.
That one's mine.
Sorry. But I am giving some away. Does anyone know what that picture is? Yes? No. You are correct, but that's not what the logo is. Anybody?
Oh, excellent. That was good.
Right.
It is Newton, but does anyone know what the logo is?
I picked this one. Okay, so this is always a fun fact I like to tell people. That's actually the very first Apple logo. Before they came out with their trademark, it was the image of an apple falling on Newton's head, giving him the idea of gravity. Fun fact number 2, in case you don't walk away with anything else, you can walk away with this. So that logo was made by one of the first CEOs of Apple. His name is Ronald Wayne. You know why he's famous? You never heard of him. He sold his share of Apple to Steve Jobs for $800. That share is worth $22 billion today. So poor Ronald Wayne, I don't know where he is, but that was his logo.
Okay, let's keep going for another 30
in
seconds.
The original Apple logos. And this N, what is N? It does not stand for Nintendo. It is standing for Netscape, one of the original web browsers, very popular for a very short period of time. And this picture, which we couldn't really crop out perfectly, is, oh, you had no idea, Aaron, so that's another one wrong for you. It is for the Ask website where you could look up and ask all kinds of questions. And finally, ding, 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 ding. You did get one correct, Aaron. You have the AOL Instant Messenger. I hope no one out there is still using AOL for email, but AOL Instant Messenger was very popular back in its...
Okay, we're going to now play the full video.
I think we got out.
I just want to, literally as we are done, just want to get back to, again, what we have up here that we've kept on referring to in our mind is really the part which, if you're using iPads in your classroom or considering them, this process is what you need to understand and think about before you really ever try to have your students do work in the classroom, at least in a thoughtful way. And therefore, again, every LMS, certainly Haiku Learning, as we mentioned, has those options where the teacher will first post that content. Student will then open it up. But what I do want, because this could be a little overwhelming, I just want to reiterate, you're not going to go through this whole process every day, right? Or every week. That's going to depend on what it is as a teacher you want your students to do for you. So some days that might be it. You might have a quick do now type of assignment for the first 5 minutes of class that you'll just walk around and spot check. They're not ever going to hand it back in. So these first two parts definitely will exist in your classroom on their own. If it's, in your eyes, worthy to go to the next level, then you'll have them handed in. Now, are you going to annotate every piece of information that they give into you? Maybe yes, maybe no. That's what you're going to decide. But again, just because you don't annotate it doesn't mean they shouldn't hand it in. Them handing it in is a digital footprint, a digital copy of every piece of work that they've ever handed into you. You could choose to annotate it. You might, I don't want to say this too loud, actually print it out or have them print it out still, as much as we have in our school really reduced paper in those grades out of iPads. The goal in life is not necessarily to reduce paper, even though it is certainly something that will help in terms of being able to reapportion our resources. And then finally, this last part with the annotation, and what we would argue is the kind of the highest level of annotating, not just with the written form, but perhaps being more creative and kind of modeling for your students that you want them to use the iPad but in a creative way. So you might then take that and create in a creative way, use the iPad to take that, turn it into some video. That's not the only way, but that's certainly one that we've liked. Just keep this in mind, and if you have that LMS in place, if you have iPads, although I'm not here to say that only iPads are the only device, what we did today is pretty much specific to tablets. Pretty much everything we did today will be the same on other type of tablets, but if you have a one-to-one program with Chromebooks or with laptops, it's going to be some similarities, but conversation is a little different because the devices are different. That goes back to that first slide we mentioned, iPads are not laptops. So if you use iPads, if you use an LMS, and again, that slide we put up there before of the 6 different ways you'd want to use your iPads, the first 5 are probably the reason you've chosen an iPad. The one we focused on today is super important. It's not the reason to choose an iPad, but if you've used an iPad, this, we believe, is a great workflow or options of workflow that works. If anyone has any questions, feel free. You can find us, email us, Twitter. Thank you for coming, especially at this late hour. Most people are in Epcot already. And thank you very much.
Thank you. So if anyone wants